Hi, we are in Marshfield, Massachusetts at the old Winslow Cemetery. This cemetery is the original burial site for the first inhabitants of Marshfield. And before it was called Marshfield, it was called Green Harbor. And the name comes from basically the rivers coming down into the harbor, creating these great marshes. And in those marshes you get all sorts of food, and you even get oysters. Beautiful oyster from the bay. Now Green Harbor was incorporated in 1640, became the town Marshfield. And up here is a monument to some of the early settlers who are buried in this cemetery, but they don't have headstones because the headstones have since deteriorated. In memory of the early settlers at Greenfield, Green Harbor, Marshfield. Now, lucky for us, we have three of our ancestors on this monument. First of all, we have Robert Carver and his wife, Christian Turner. Now, Robert Carver, his father died in 1598, and he was adopted by his uncle, John Carver. Now, John Carver is the pilgrim who served as the first governor of Plymouth Colony and also wrote the Mayflower Compact. Now, Robert didn't come over on the Mayflower. He waited about 10 years, but he came over and he married Christian Turner in 1617, actually. And they had a son, John Carver Sr. And John Carver Sr. married Millicent Ford, who was the daughter of William Ford and Ann Ames. And they had a son, Captain William Joseph Carver, who married Elizabeth Foster. And all those families are buried in this cemetery. So we have Robert Carver, who was our 10 times great-grandfather, who was an English separatist, came over after the Mayflower. And this fellow, William Ford. Now, William Ford is our 11 times great-grandfather, and he married Anna Ames. Now, he's a Deacon William Ford, and he founded the town's first grist mill around 1643. And they're buried side by side in this cemetery as well. And then they had a daughter, and her name was Millicent Ford, and she married John Carver Sr. And Millicent was our 9 times great-grandmother, and William Ford and Ann Eames were actually our 10 times great-grandparents. And down here, we have a fellow named Thomas Chillingworth, and he married Joan Hampton. Now, Thomas was born in 1612, and he died in 1652. And Joan was born in 1616, and she died in 1684. And these two people are our 10 times great-grandparents. Now, Thomas and Joan, they had a daughter, Mary Chillingworth. And what happened to Mary Chillingworth? We'll head this way. Like I said, all these people are buried in the cemetery, but we really don't know where. In addition to those two, we have all the way from our 5 times great-grandfather up to our 11 times great-grandfathers, all living in Marshfield and all buried within this area. So down here, Mary Chillingworth, she married a guy named John Foster. And John Foster's headstone is here, and his footstone is right over here. He's a Deacon John Foster. Watch out for the poison oak. And we'll take a look at his headstone. Here we are, John Foster's headstone, the Deacon John Foster. Now, John Foster's headstone, here's what it says. Here lies the body of Deacon John Foster, who died June the 13th, 1732, age 91 years. And he's buried here. We're not sure where his wife is. But there's a couple other members of the family. We have over here, we have Sarah Foster Thomas, Deborah Foster, Lucretia Foster Atwell, and Emily Foster. And there you have it. We've got many generations who were born and died in Marshfield. We've got 3 of the founding fathers of Marshfield, and we have the Deacon John Foster, all buried up here in old Winslow Cemetery up in Marshfield. Thank you.
That's it. That's when you Google it.
I'm gonna get it perfect.
Hi.